This morning, I'm going to take a little bit of time and I'm going to talk about structuring suggestion. I passed everyone a handout, so there should be a handout on your desk. If you don't have a handout, it's because your next door neighbor stole it, or because it's buried under the pile of papers on your desk, or if after checking those two things you really don't have a handout, let me know and I'll give you one. I have a few extra handouts here. And I want to talk about, I guess, the magic words in hypnosis. Some of you know I wrote a new book. It's titled Magic Words in Hypnosis, actually right here. The source book of hypnosis, pattern scripts, and how to overcome hypnotic difficulties. The reason why I wrote this book was really pretty simple. In the field of hypnosis, we have a lot of script books. For example, not wanting to waste any more paper than I already do, I wrote a script book, but it's actually a PDF. John Sorbonne will be here tomorrow. Some of you will say, he's on the schedule, but I haven't seen him, and it's hard to miss John Sorbonne. John will be here tomorrow. He's on the 6 a.m. flight from New York, and weather is going to be good, so barring any mechanical difficulties, he should be here about 9 or 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. John Sorbonne's got the best-selling script book in hypnosis. It's titled, profoundly enough, Hypnotic Scripts at Work by John Sorbonne. And it's a great book. I recommend it, and I actually use it. There's a copy in my office, and I actually use that script book with my clients. Now, whether it's my script book, or whether it's John Sorbonne's script book, or any other script book out there, and there are many good script books out there, they all have one thing in common. Basically, a script book is written for hypnotists, so hypnotists can take a script and read it from the beginning of a session to an end of a session. At least that's how a lot of newcomers see it. And what happens is, when people do this, people don't make change. Now, some of you know, I actually started my career by paying for college doing magic and balloon animals at kid parties. I am actually the Great Rick with my magic birds, Shumley and Ernie and Bert. And I would conjure them up from a bowl of fire and entertain all of the 6-year-olds, and then I would make balloon animals, and it was a great success. And so that's how I paid for college, was doing magic and balloon animals at kid parties. And as a magician, magicians are known not for scripts, but for pattern. In fact, that's actually how I know Steve Lancaster. I was 17 years old. I wandered into Top Hat Magic and Costume in Tulsa, Oklahoma, after moving from Chicago, and I said, "Hi, I'm a magician from Chicago." And he said, "Yeah, right." And we've been good friends ever since then. Well, magicians have what they call pattern. It kind of goes like this, because things get screwed up in magic. It doesn't always work the way you want to. Hypnotists have a misbelief that it will always work like the book. But magicians know that that's not what happens. So in a magic act, a magician might have some cards, and they want you to pick the 5 of clubs. So we'll say, pick a card, any card, but the person picks the 8 of clubs. Here's what you say, because the person just screwed it up. Now go ahead and put the card back in the deck, anywhere in the deck, and they put it on the top, which now screwed you up. You said anywhere, but you actually meant more towards the middle, and they put it on the very top, and nobody ever does that, and they now screwed it up. So now you have to say this. That's called pattern. When you buy a magic trick, if you go into Steve's shop and you buy a magic trick, you won't get a script that says, take the cards, fan the cards, tell the person to pick a card, ask somebody to replace the card. You won't get that. What you'll get instead is a list of pattern. Say this, and if this happens, do this. If that happens, do this. If this happens, do that. That's a lot more similar to hypnosis than the way script books have been written. So I spent a lot of time training new hypnotists. In fact, many of you have been to some of the training classes I've done. And the hardest part for the new hypnotist is structuring suggestions and dealing with contingencies. And so that's what I want to talk about here, because that's what hasn't been written about in the field of hypnosis. We've come up with cookie cutter scripts. There's a purpose to those, by the way, and I'll share what they are. Rather than really collections of pattern to really help people understand how to structure suggestion and how to make hypnosis sessions more effective. And so, whether you're a new hypnotist or whether you're an old hypnotist, hopefully some of the ideas that I can share here over the next hour, you'll find useful in your practice. Now, the very first concept, or the very first idea here in using magic words or in creating effective scripts, is to recognize that suggestion begins as soon as the client walks in the door. Actually, the first suggestion begins when we finish our phone call on the telephone with them to schedule the appointment. And I am looking forward to seeing you, as if this is what a phone looks like anymore. A banana is no longer a realistic representation to a 3-year-older. Why are you holding a banana? It's a phone. No, it's not. Just go with it. It used to be. The first suggestion, though, begins in the phone conversation, which is, great, I am looking forward to seeing you on Thursday. I know you are going to do well. That's the first suggestion. There's actually 2 suggestions there. One, they won't cancel their appointment. They'll show up. And the second suggestion is that this is going to be a positive experience from them. And we have to recognize that suggestion does not begin when the induction is over. I think a lot of people have a perception that suggestion begins after we do the induction and after we do the deepener. And most of you have been trained in induction techniques. Probably everybody here in the room knows how to hypnotize somebody. Close your eyes, and as you deeply relax, envision a single white puffy cloud floating off to the distance. Notice your muscles becoming more and more relaxed, your heart rate becoming smooth and rhythmic, your hands warm and heavy. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, all the way down now, completely relaxed. Perfect. There's our induction and our deepener. Granted the 20-second demonstration, but there it is. People wondered, can you do a rapid PMR? There it was. Yes, you can. People like me with ADD love rapid progressive muscle relaxation inductions. Our first suggestion, though, does not begin after we do the deepener. Our first suggestion actually begins when they walk in the door. I am really glad to see you, Tom. I know that Stephanie talked to you on the phone, and I didn't have a chance to talk to you. But here, have a seat. There's my first suggestion. You see, later on, let's just say it's weight loss or smoking cessation or stop chasing cars or whatever the issue is. If he won't sit in the chair, he's not going to follow my suggestion to see the buffet as an opportunity to make one of many healthy food choices in the correct portion. And so suggestion really begins before we even do the induction. It begins with my greeting. And we have to recognize that everything we say, both consciously and subconsciously, and that's really a dichotomy that I don't actually use too much, begins as soon as they walk in the door. And so there are things that I have committed to memory, and these are my patterns. And I meet a lot of hypnotists who hear something that I think is a little bit misleading. It's got a lot of truth, but it's a little misleading. And this debate always rages on hypnothoughts, and everyone types out their opinion. I type my opinion out. You can read about half of it, because I'm the worst typist on hypnothoughts. That's, by the way, a negative self-suggestion. In sociology, we call that a self-fulfilling prophecy. By the way, notice other disciplines use hypnosis, they just don't know it. That's an observation that I've certainly made. Yeah, I love it when I'm ready to train and somebody who's been trained in EMDR comes along, like, I've been trained in EMDR, I don't know about this hypnosis thing. I'm like, you've been doing hypnosis for the last 5 years. But I need pattern committed to memory. There's a myth about Milton Erickson, and the myth is that Milton Erickson never used scripts. He used what we have learned to be naturalistic trance. He would say to a person as they sit in the chair, so I noticed that you're brailing the side of your sleeve. What a great language pattern, Uncle Milt. Awesome. You just came up with that on the spur of the moment. You are such a genius. No, Milton Erickson actually used the same words with different people over and over and over, and he wrote them down. And these were his scripts. And Milton Erickson actually said that a good hypnotist takes their scripts, writes them down, and pares them down to those that work every year, and throws the rest of them away and continues to add to their repertoire. Now, Milton Erickson, I've never seen a video of him, with Mondi and Erica, what was her name, Mondi and whatever, I don't remember their name. He didn't have the script, he didn't have John Cervone's hypnosis scripts that work in front of him, but the things that he was saying were things that he knew he was going to say. This is pattern. And he wouldn't read the same thing to every person. That's not what makes a script usable. But what he would do is, in different situations where it was appropriate, he would use different phrases. We know, for example, he liked to say, It doesn't matter if you remember to forget to smoke or forget to remember to smoke. That's a script. You might not have had a piece of paper, but it's still a script. We know that Milton Erickson said, and as you relax, you might notice that your left hand is different than your right hand. Or perhaps you'll notice that your right hand is different than the left hand, but your subconscious mind right now is inherently aware that one hand is different than the other. Perhaps the left hand is the right choice for you, or perhaps your subconscious mind has chosen the right hand, leaving only one hand left. It doesn't really matter. Either way, you'll notice that one hand feels differently and will begin to rise in the air, higher and higher and higher. By the way, Milton Erickson, known for indirect suggestion, was the most directive hypnotist I have ever watched. Direct suggestion from beginning to end, using hypnosis scripts. So the idea or the myth that people shouldn't use scripts is inaccurate. What we should do is we should have these committed to memory. And the way to have them committed to memory is to write them down, to use them with a variety of different people, to see how they work in different situations, to have essentially what magicians have. And I don't know if your closet as a magician looks like my closet as a magician, but I have piles of paper that have no order or semblance, that are simply pieces of pattern piled up over the year from various magicians who've given them to me. Your closet kind of look like that? But hypnotists don't. They have these neat 3-ring binders with scripts. They're supposed to read them from start to finish. Now, I do use written scripts with my clients. In fact, I use a lot of John Cervone's. John Cervone and I, if you haven't met him, do not have the same style or personality at all. We're exact opposites. People say, how do you use John Cervone's scripts? Because you're not like John at all. No, John uses run-on sentences. John uses superlative words. Superfluous words. John doesn't have paragraph indentations. It's crazy. It's manic. You'll see tomorrow. How would I use that? Easy. I go through John's script book before I have a client, and I take a highlighter and I highlight the parts of his scripts that I like, and I put X's over the parts that I hate or that I don't understand. And then I highlight the other parts that I like, and I bring those sometimes to sessions with me. In fact, I have the PDF of his book on my computer, and I just simply print off sessions, and I'll mark them up like that with 2 or 3 pages. And here's what I say to my client to introduce a written script. This is pattern. And as you relax, continuing to go deeper into a state of hypnosis, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, you may hear me reading you a story or a poem or a parable, or perhaps even reading from some of my notes. This is, of course, to make sure that I remember everything that's important to you. You came here today to have me help you with a particular change that's important to you. And I want to make sure that I don't miss anything that's important. And so during our session, there may be periods of silence, where your subconscious mind can simply do the work that it needs to do. There may be times when you hear me speak from my heart, passing along information that's useful to you that others have found useful. And you may hear me reading from my notes, or even a story or a parable, because it will teach a lesson that's important to you. And so that's how I introduce a written script. By the way, what I just said for you was my script for introducing a script. And then it doesn't appear abnormal if I pick up a book, or a script, or a poem, or a parable. By the way, people ask me all the time, how do you get these? Google. I'm not a great storyteller. I'm not James Hazelrig. You know, maybe if you're a great storyteller, you can come up with your own stories. I don't. I borrow them. Last time I was in Fort Worth, actually, last time I was in Arlington, I stopped at Borders. I spent an hour wandering around the poetry section, looking at poetry books. The reason why is because poems often teach great things. It's a great source of stories, parables, metaphor, poems in therapy. Google is your friend. I actually decided last night to illustrate this point by Googling stories that teach moral lessons and see if I could find anything that would be useful to us as hypnotists. I knew I would, and so I did. So I printed a couple off. I'll read them for you here in a little bit. By the way, after shopping for poetry books and spending all that money, I go back to Tulsa and my friend Carol has written a damn poetry book. There was no need for me to buy all those poetry books. And her book is on my desk in my office, and I sometimes read those to my clients as indirect suggestion. So you didn't know your book was going to be used in such a meaningful way, did you? Yeah. And so, when I structure suggestions, I do not mind bringing written material into my session. In fact, if I do 5 therapy sessions in a day, I have no need to prove to hypnotists at a hypnosis convention that I am the almighty hypnotist who needs no written material. I'm the first to admit it. I'm getting older, my brain is getting fuzzy. I have a lot on my mind. I have teenage kids, which is crazy, and I'll lose sight of what I'm trying to accomplish in the middle of a session and go into trance too if I don't have something to help me stay focused. If you do 5, 6, 7, or 8 sessions in a day, as I have certainly done before, I don't know, maybe you're some sort of hypno god if you don't need any notes, but I need notes, and I bring them all the time. And I introduce them by simply letting my client know that the reason why I'm doing this is so that I make sure I meet their needs. Then it's neither abnormal nor is it something that's not expected. Now, I never take a script book and look up, client is afraid of fire hydrants. Okay, flip open to that chapter, okay, say, oh great, there's a script for it in here, go into a session with a client who's afraid of fire hydrants, and now say, close your eyes, and deeply relax. Puffy white cloud disappears. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, sleep. Oh, sorry, wrong workshop. And then grab the script on fire hydrant phobia and start reading it. Because I haven't read it before. I don't know if it meets the needs of my clients. And if I read from a script without having read it many times beforehand, I'm not going to read it very well. I probably read a lot like you read. I can't write my own book because I wrote it. Anyone else have a book here? Read it, got a book, right. I haven't read your book. I'll go read it tonight. I haven't read it yet. Here's how I would read if I just picked up something and read it. One of several myths about hypnotism as a therapeutic tool is that suggestions implanted during trance overcome your will to smoke or to eat certain foods, thereby resulting in smoking cessation or weight loss. See, my intonation's not quite right. My tempo's not quite right because I don't know what these words are. In truth, the effectiveness of such therapy very much depends on your own willingness to change. Further, hypnotherapy, as opposed to mere hypnosis, seeks to resolve issues or patterns of thought that typically support negative behaviors. I mean, I'm a good reader, in a 3rd grade reading class, but my emphasis is wrong, as William talked about this morning. My intonation's not correct. However, if I had reviewed this ahead of time and knew the contents of her book, I could come up here and I could do a dramatic reading. I could do like Jesse Jackson reading, what did he read? Dr. Seuss died, and Jesse Jackson did a dramatic reading on Saturday Night Live of 1 fish, 2 fish, red fish, blue fish. It was awesome. It was awesome. And you know what? When he did that skit, I'm sure he didn't just grab the book and read it for the first time. As a parent, he had probably read it hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times, and it was a remarkably appropriate, wonderful, and fitting tribute. Because he was prepared. He understood that content. Likewise, when we use a written script, we can't just go to the book. We need to understand what it says, we need to practice it, we need to rehearse it, etc. Let's talk a little bit about what's actually on the notes, though. Suggestion begins when the client walks in the door. And I begin, during my pre-talk, giving them positive affirmations and positive suggestions. I'm really glad that you're here. I've had other clients sit in that exact same chair who've expressed to me a fear about being able to overcome their desire to chase cars. But they too have been able to leave this office and experience success. That's a suggestion. What was my suggestion?
They're going to
You do like other people. That's a Milton Erickson suggestion, by the way. An unreferenced index. Who are these other people? If you want to know how to structure suggestions, a great resource is Milton Erickson's language patterns. People say, why don't you write a book on it? Why would I write a book on it? You can get Jamie Smart's Ericksonian card deck as an iTunes app or iPod app for $2.95. You can buy his deck of cards for $12.95. Just Google Jamie Smart Salad Limited. Don't ask me why his company is called Salad Limited. Doesn't seem to make any sense. Salad, like you eat. And his cards are called salad cards. Don't ask me why they're called salad cards. Ask Jamie Smart. But if you Google Jamie Smart salad cards, you will find Jamie Smart and his amazing deck of salad cards. And there's 52 cards, and you could play a card game if you had somebody else who was interested in this esoteric subject. Or you could just carry them around, or use the iPhone app and flip open the cards, and next time you're waiting in line, look at a couple and practice those. It's a great way to learn Ericksonian language patterns, and that helps you learn how to structure suggestion. And so when the client comes in, I begin during my pre-talk, during my intake, giving them suggestions, letting them know that they can be successful, that others have been successful, and that I have the ability to help them be successful. William alluded to this earlier. Therapist expectation, the client also needs to perceive that I have the power to help them. There is an element that I think is necessary for our clients to perceive us, not as the all-powerful oracle of change, but as a professional who's capable of providing the service that they're paying for. And I actually have no idea what the other hypnotists in Tulsa charge. I would imagine that I charge a little bit more than that. Just my guess. And the reason why is simple. I like to get paid for my time. I make my money in a lot of different ways, ranging from book publishing to training psychotherapists to doing hypnosis and other things. And so when I do spend time with clients, which I do every single week, I like to get paid for that. So I don't do cheap therapy. I'm not overly expensive, but I imagine I'm a few dollars more than the rest of the people in town. I haven't bothered to find out what they charge. I haven't asked clients what other people charge. I really don't care because I believe that the service I provide is worth the price that I charge. And I clearly communicate that to my clients. Because clients want to know when they come in and they plunk down a real hard-earned money that the person who's helping them is able to do that. By the way, that is a suggestion in and of itself. And a lot of hypnotists don't know the pattern necessary for getting paid. So here it is. Are you ready? Here's what I say to clients. When it's time to get paid, and I get paid at the beginning of my sessions. My prices are on my webpage. You can go to TulsaHypnosis.com and see them if you wonder what I charge. By the way, people ask me all the time, what should I charge? The biggest factor in charging what you charge is geography. If you're in Manhattan, charge $500. If you're in LA, charge $400 a session. If you're in Chicago, charge $300 a session. If you're in Dallas, charge $200 a session. If you're in Tulsa, I charge $139 a session. If you're in Ada, Oklahoma, charge $105 a session. Right? If you're in Antlers, Oklahoma, charge 2 cheeseburgers and a 20 cents. Yes, that was a joke. Just north of here is the pop drug capital of America, apparently. So, right up there. So, Idabel, right? So, what we charge is really geographically dependent. But I say to my clients this, I say, and I have some paperwork for you to fill out, and I do, and I kind of make a joke out of it. I say, because all offices have paperwork. This way they're not irritated by it. And so there are a couple of forms that don't take you a lot of time, but I need you to fill these out. If you have any difficulties or have any questions, feel free to ask me. By the way, are you going to be paying with a credit card, check, or with cash? That's what I ask them. Practice that right now. Are you going to be paying with a credit card, check, or cash? Say that. Are you going to be paying with a credit card, cash, or check? If you don't practice it now, you're never going to say it to your client. If you don't say it with your client, you're not going to ask for the money until the session is over, and you're not going to have confidence to do the session. Because you're going to be wondering through the entire session if you're worth what you're going to charge them at the end. That's one stress I don't need. Get paid up front. And so the question is, since they know the rate because it's on the website, and Stephanie told them on the phone, is are you going to be paying with a credit card, with a check, or with cash? And they tell me, and then I say to them, well, you're filling out the paperwork, I'll go ahead and get you a receipt. Say that. While you're filling out the paperwork, I'm going to go get your receipt. And then I let them fill out the paperwork, and I step outside of the room for a minute, and I go charge their card or take their pile of cash or their check, and I put it in the drawer, and I write them a receipt. And I come back in a few minutes after kind of the average length of time it takes a person to fill out most of the paperwork. I don't wait till they're done, because I might have a question. But they don't need me hovering over them while I try to fill out the paperwork. Give them some time to fill out the paperwork. And it's a great time for me, if I've had a busy day, to then use the restroom or to make a phone call or to check my email or whatever it is that I need to do to make sure my phone's not on for the later session. So all these suggestions begin. And the reason I had you repeat those things is, if you're new to hypnosis, you need to practice pattern. A magician takes a mirror and sits in front of the mirror and practices all of these contingencies. When they screw up, they practice what they're going to say when the screw up happens, because they know it could happen in real life too. Hypnotists don't do that. We just have a start and finish. What if these things, there's some things on the list here, what if these things happen? What if the client opens their eyes during the induction? What do you say? Exactly. Everyone has different pattern. I'll share with mine. I like this. Great, your eyes work. That's what Willie just said. Awesome. I'm glad your eyes work. I liked what Sid just said. Direct suggestion. Now close your eyes again. That works. What I will sometimes say to a client, if they open their eyes to test if they can open their eyes, I'll simply say what Sid says. I'll say, I'll look at them and I'll say, basically the same thing. Hey, go on, yeah, close your eyes and go deeper, relax even further. Or I'll say to a client, get you 1 second, or I'll say to a client, if I sense there's some anxiety with this, continue to keep your eyes open for a moment. You know, I have a YouTube video on YouTube titled Eyes Open Hypnosis, and there have been hundreds of thousands of people who've actually watched that video. Did you know that you can do hypnosis with the eyes open? If you're more comfortable with the eyes open, I'm more than happy to let you either keep your eyes open or close your eyes at any time during the session, whichever you prefer. It doesn't bother me if their eyes are open, and they always end up closing their eyes. Why? Because it's so much easier to simply close the eyes. You had a thought?
You answered my question. I was just going to ask, I can't see if their eyes are open or not.
Sure. Yeah, and for a couple visually impaired folks here, you know, I do some Skype hypnosis over Skype. And one of the things is, depending on the quality of their webcam, or their lack of a webcam, you might not be able to see them at all. And I've learned that I can't tell if their eyes are open or closed on Skype. I can't tell many things that I can if a person's in front of me. You have to realize that there are no obstacles. We just continue to work around it. And whether their eyes are open or not really is irrelevant. Most people eventually do close their eyes. So we need some kind of pattern. It could be a direct suggestion, close your eyes and go deeper. It could be an affirmation like Willie came up with, awesome, your eyes work. It could be something that reduces anxiety like my pattern. Your eyes work, and that's awesome because you can actually do this with your eyes open. Simply focus your attention on the far wall. Looking at a small dot on the far wall. Do the session using eye fixation. Eventually their eyes will close. And if their eyes don't close, so what? Right. I mean, you go to a movie theater, you're hypnotized for 2 hours and don't close your eyes. People say to me, that's not hypnosis. Sure it is. Did you know Marley and me, Jennifer Aniston, and Owen, what's his name, don't really own a dog? 14 dogs were used in the making of that movie. There is no dog named Marley, but yet everybody in the movie theater was crying. They had a real emotional response to a dog that didn't exist, that's actually owned by people who don't own the dog. That's hypnosis. And the exact same process. What about if the therapist needs to go to the comfort room? This is the International Certification Board of Clinical Hypnotherapists, so I've used as many languages as possible here. What if the client, or what if the therapist needs to go to the comfort room, the water closet, the loo, the jar, the dunny, the baño? I surveyed the group here, and we have people who are from Singapore, the Philippines, from Europe. The dunny is Australian, in case you're like, what the hell is a dunny? Or a bath, or whatever. So use whatever word you want to here. But what if you need to pee? That's the bottom line. Has that ever happened to you?
Yep.
Well, use speed trance. No. What are you gonna do? You gotta go. You gotta go. You gotta go. I mean, it could happen. It has happened. Actually, Scott last week.
Sounds around you.
Yeah, the sounds around you. As you listen to the recording of the String in Springtime, the binaural beat CD by Dan Kern. Dan's laughing over here. He's mentioning how he's going to make his next recording in the bathroom. No, I actually like what Scott said the other day. He said, what if you need to leave the room? He said, use this bit of pattern. This next part works better if I step out of the room for a moment. Now, I don't know if I'd be as bold as Scott, but what I've said to clients is this, and I'm going to give your mind a moment to continue to relax. And as you relax both mind and body, I'm going to give you a few minutes to simply enjoy the experience of hypnosis, this deep state of relaxation. As a matter of fact, I'm going to step out of the room for a few moments. I'll be back in 3 or 4 minutes, and simply let yourself release anything either known or unknown, keeping you from success during this time of self-hypnosis. I'll step out of the room for a few minutes. I'll pee. I'll come back in the room, and I'll say, suggestion, you've done fantastic. We could even use one of Milton Erickson's pattern here, and if you study Milton Erickson, you'll learn the pattern. It's really pretty awesome. I'm really glad that I'm not working with a dim-witted fool who requires that I remain in the room the entire time. Or I could even use this Milton Erickson pattern. It's almost as if you're the hypnotist, and I'm just sitting here relaxing and watching you do all of the work. That's a direct Milton Erickson pattern. Those things, those language patterns are very, very effective. What if a jackhammer goes off? It could happen. For years, my office was, in fact, some of you have been in my old office. Steve's been there, Keith's been there. Some of you were in my old office over in Tulsa next to St. Francis Hospital. My office was right next to the hospital and right in the flight pattern of the helicopters. The life flight helicopters. What if a sound goes off? They're real simple. And as you relax, you may even notice the sound of the helicopter flying by or the jackhammer outside. That's simply going to reassure you that you're exactly where you need to be today, doing the work that you need to be doing right here in my office. In fact, those outside sounds will help you to relax even further, knowing that you're exactly at the right place, exactly at the right time, doing exactly what you need to be doing. A great pattern to have. What's the next thing on this list here? The client gets frustrated and says, this isn't working. By the way, if that happens, your pre-talk probably was no good. It means you need to go back and re-explain what hypnosis is. It's happened to me. I've had clients who are just so frustrated that they're not even frustrated with me. They're so frustrated with themselves, their lives, their problems, that they come in as a big ball of frustration, and I try to do relaxation with them, and they just have a really hard time with it. And usually they pop open their eyes and say, it's just not working. I just can't relax. Awesome. Now, by the way, it was a pattern interrupt. That wasn't what they were expecting. Awesome. That means we get to use a different type of hypnosis, one that doesn't require relaxation, but instead requires the focus and concentration that you have in expressing your anxiety. So go ahead and keep your eyes open. Focus on that spot on the far wall. And now I'm going to do a really directive form of hypnosis based on eye fixation, where they channel that energy and anxiety into a specific spot, eventually freeing the conscious mind from the many distractions which have kept it from being able to complete the session. And eventually I'll get to a point then, because if you stare at a spot long enough, you'll notice that it may begin to become sharper, crisper and clearer, or perhaps fuzzier and more difficult and less important to see. But either way, you'll probably begin, this is an indirect suggestion, to notice changes, and at that point you will find, because people like to find things, they're simply easier to close the eyes and relax. And now I'm back where I was before. These types of contingency plans are the patterns that script books do not contain. And these are the things that we must master in order to be successful in hypnosis. Not because we have to have these patterns for each and every client, but because as a hypnotist, I have to have confidence. I'm not worried about any situation. This is, I think, the advantage that stage hypnotists have over clinical hypnotists. There's no way to practice stage hypnosis. I've always joked that the ultimate confirmation of narcissistic personality disorder is the person a stage hypnotist? Because you can't practice, you can't just say, by the way, I need 100 friends to get together, I'm going to see if this thing works, okay? Can you all come over on Sunday night at 7 o'clock and let me practice my stage hypnosis routine a few times? That's not how it works. Here's how it works. The only way to become a stage hypnotist, I know Clyde did this about 5 years ago, he became a stage hypnotist. I bet you did exactly what I did when I became a stage hypnotist. You need a job, you need to work somewhere. I walked into bars hoping to work some door deals, and here's what I said. Hi, I'm Richard, I'm a hypnotist. A stage hypnotist. Really, I'd never hypnotized anyone on stage. And I can help increase your business. In fact, my show can get your bar crowd here earlier and keep your dinner crowd late for drinks. Would you like to talk about how we can both work together to make some money? Bar owners are really interested in that. They say, sure, let's do this as soon as possible. You get it on the schedule, now you have a bar of 100 people drinking beer who want the hypno boy to entertain them, and you got to do it. So stage hypnosis is the ultimate confirmation of narcissistic personality disorder, I think. And I remember my first stage hypnosis show. I said, who wants to come up? You know, they all come up. And I remember I did my induction facing these people because I didn't want to see what was happening. Even though I had been doing hypnosis for 10 years, it was now stage hypnosis. And I remember I turned around and they were all out. And I was like, yes, it works. Stage hypnotists have to deal with every single contingency possible. I'm doing a grad night show here in a couple weeks, 2 o'clock in the morning. There's going to be 300 screaming teenage kids. They're all going to be crazy. They all want their 15 minutes of fame. The parents want me to entertain them. I'm going to do a great job because they paid me a lot of money to do it. And the show's going to work fine. But trust me, no matter how hard I plan, this show is not going to end up like my notes. I'm going to get done with the show and I'll be like, that wasn't what I was going to do. A stage hypnotist has that confidence to be able to deal with everything. I mean, the person who gets up in the middle of the induction and says, I'm leaving? Really? You're really doing that in the middle of my induction, huh? You're not waiting 2 more minutes? I mean, you got to be able to deal with everything. If you're a clinical hypnotist, learn stage hypnosis, even if you're never going to do a stage hypnosis show, because it teaches confidence. That's what these patterns help us to do. What if you're doing a dual induction and one is in stage hypnosis? We call them floppers. Right? What if you're working with two? And I love doing couples hypnosis. There are a couple of reasons why. One, I do a lot of smoking cessation. I see couples, I think it's easier to quit if they quit together. Okay, it avoids one relapse cue. Second reason is a business reason. I charge them for 2 people. I love getting paid twice my fee for one session. What if you have one who's a flopper or somnambulistic who goes into trance easy and the other one's having a much harder time? What's your pattern? Oh my gosh, I was going to use a progressive muscle relaxation induction, a puffy white cloud, and then a 10-count deepener, but I said close your eyes. He's in La La Land slumping in his chair and she won't close her eyes. What do I do? Do what a stage hypnotist would do. Have that pattern. And you can continue to relax deeply, listening to my work with your lovely bride. And as I continue to give her directions to help her relax, you'll continue to go deeper and deeper and deeper. And in a few moments, we'll join you together to accomplish this goal. And now I work directly with her as he continues to relax. But I've learned that from doing stage hypnosis. Because guess what? You have 20 people on stage that all want to go into trance at the same time. and you need to be able to manage these situations. You manage the situations by knowing the pattern. And magicians write that pattern down. They write it down. What did you say in this situation? What did you do? They write it down and they commit it to memory. So when I'm doing a magic trick, one of my favorite tricks was actually Steve Martin's in the 1970s. He did a magic trick, he had a crowd of 10,000 people. So I'd like to show you a magic trick. It's called dimes. Get it, 10,000 people. A trick called dimes. You can't screw it up. No one can see it. Guess you had to be there. But let's say I'm doing a trick and you know, Steve, I want you to take a look at this nickel. Okay, follow the nickel right here. Oh my gosh, they weren't supposed to see me drop that.
Oh yeah.
Drop that, you know, that wasn't real smooth. And so now, focus on, whatever I'm doing, I remember I screwed that one up, but Steve didn't notice. It worked. As the magician, I'm surprised that trick worked. So now I go home and I write down my pattern. When they see me, drop it into the other hand. Simply pull it out of the ear and make it look like you were joking around doing a kid trick. No, you've seen that one before. I wouldn't bore you a trick like that, but let me show you something incredibly awesome. It uses 2 cards and only 2 cards. In a moment, you'll know why I'm using 2 cards. And I wish I had 2 cards because I'd do card work for you right now and blow you away. But having the pattern helps me to deal with that. I know, I didn't come prepared to do magic today. Next time. One of the other things I think is important in effective suggestion is give up concepts like resistance and denial. I was trained in substance abuse counseling. That's what I did first. I just celebrated 23 years sober on April Fool's Day of all days. So I started out as a drug and alcohol counselor. Because I had a degree in ministry and I had only done 3 things: ministry, sell cars, and bartend. I got fired from my job as a youth pastor. I thought, what can I do? I can sell cars or I can bartend. Well, you get drunk doing both of those. So with a degree in ministry hanging on the wall, I decided I would become a therapist. But nobody wants a therapist who's, whatever, 23 years old with 3 months of sobriety. And the whole situation was pretty awkward. And so I started doing drug and alcohol counseling with teens. That's what I started doing. And I enjoyed doing that. But I was taught as a substance abuse counselor, old-time substance abuse counseling, that you need to get into now. You need to break through that denial. You as the therapist are responsible for getting in a group, putting them on the hot seat, breaking through that denial, confront. And I really came to the conclusion, since that's not really my personality style, that the belief in denial was all about perpetuating the therapist's self-grandiosity. This is something that I do to let you have the opportunity to make change. When I break through your denial, you respond to my power. That works in stage hypnosis. It's part of the show. Doesn't work in clinical hypnosis. It doesn't make for effective change in counseling. So I quickly gave up the concept that denial was real. When people are in denial, what it tells me is that my client doesn't know something that they need to know. My job is not to break through that, but to teach them what they need to know in order to choose to do something different. I see denial as simply a behavior that indicates there's an expectation and an action that's occurring different with this person than with other people. It just simply means I need to be somewhere else with the client. I wish my clients came to me like they could be, should be, or ought to be. But guess what? They don't. They come to me the way they are. I had a lady the other day. Most of you know I use headphones and I talk on a microphone when I do hypnosis. I like doing that. It makes the experience special. It gives me a chance to use Dan's awesome music. The helicopters flying overhead aren't as intense. So I use headphones. So I had a 73-year-old blue-haired lady. I didn't know there were any left. I thought you had to be 93 to have blue hair, but it was a 73-year-old blue-haired lady, and she came in because she wanted me to help her quit smoking. And so I had her sit in a chair that had the headphones on the back, and I said to her, there's no headphones on the back of your chair. and go ahead and put those headphones on? And she said, I don't want to do that. Well, in classic substance abuse counseling, then you must not want to quit smoking, because I've been doing this for over, whatever, a million years, and this is what works. In fact, I'm going to give you the big book of smoking, and I'm going to give you a smoking desire chip, and I'm going to have you use me as your sponsor. And if you don't do it my way, the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous actually says go out and have some more misery, and if you're alive long enough to come back, I'll help you. That's what I was trained to do as a substance abuse counselor. By the way, I'm no longer invited to speak at Takata conferences. Because I said I wasn't going to do that anymore. Instead, I see somebody who doesn't want to do it my way. My obligation as a therapist is not to help people recover the way I recovered. My obligation as a therapist is to help them recover the way they recover. I am not a hypno-purist. Clients come in my office, they leave the first session a non-smoker. About 85% of them are successful the second session. They come back, 15% of them aren't. Guess what? I'll use nicotine gum, I'll use patches, I'll use cigarettes, I'll use acupuncture, I'll use whatever. I don't care how a person quits smoking. I don't care. I don't have a dog in this fight. My goal is to help them be successful. And I will use every method possible. I had a lady come in and she said, I just filled my prescription for Chantix. I'm wearing a patch, I bought some nicotine gum, and now I'm here for my hypnosis session. And I said to her, I didn't say, oh, well, you don't need the rest of that stuff. Why, I'm a hypno-purist. Instead, what I said to her was, oh, wow, that's incredible. Did you know about 40% of the people who use Chantix actually quit smoking? I didn't tell her about the 60% that go crazy and want to kill somebody. Did you know that according to the Surgeon General, about 20% of the people who use nicotine replacement therapy are actually successful? You're using 2. That's another 40%. We're up to 80%. Did you know that she had switched brands? She's a method called Switch Down and Quit. It used to be the title of a book, actually. I don't know if it's still published. About 10%. Now we're up to 90%. People who actually decide to go cold turkey and quit smoking, that's 5%. Hypnosis, according to the research on this page, about 85% of the people are successful who use hypnosis to quit smoking. We're up to 170%. You're going to do awesome. That was my suggestion to her, that there was no way she couldn't succeed, rather than telling her, oh, wait, you have to do it my way. This isn't denial, this isn't resistance. She asked me to help her. That's what I'm paid to do. I'll help her any way that's helpful to her, even if it's different than the way that's helpful to others, or even to the majority of people. I use a lot of Ericksonian language structures. The next couple pages of your handout have a couple of those. Those are things that you can actually sort of fill in the blank, you can commit to memory, and you can practice. And then let's talk about indirect versus direct suggestion. People say to me all the time, what's better, indirect suggestion or direct suggestion? I use both in almost every single session. Here's the way I usually structure my sessions. I pick and choose. I usually say to my clients, and as you relax, deeper and deeper, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, you may even hear me sharing a parable or a story or a poem. These are things that I've learned from and others who sat in that same chair and learned from that have benefited them. Later on in our session, I'm going to give you some direct suggestions. Here's what I say to my clients. These are not suggestions that come from me, though. These are suggestions that come from you. How will I know what to suggest? You've come here today to address a very specific issue. And because you've made that choice and have already taken action on that choice, you've told me what suggestions to make. So the suggestions don't come from me, they come from the client. If you tell me to quit smoking or lose weight or stop chasing cars, you've told me, weight loss, you've told me you want to increase your activity and decrease your intake. You want to change your food preferences. You want to reframe how you see a buffet, not as an opportunity to get your $9.95's worth, but as an opportunity to get one of the many healthy food choices in the correct portion. And And you've told me what suggestions to make by coming here today. So I let my clients know that my direct suggestions aren't from me, but are actually suggestions that they've asked me to make to them. Now last night I sat around after bull riding with Scott, watching Kevin Cole do James Brown karaoke. That was awesome. That'll become a Dallas Hypnosis Convention classic. I thought to myself, what are some good stories I could share? Because people are pretty good at direct suggestion. A lot of people are, it's easy for you to come up with, here's 5 things, eat less, exercise more, ride a bicycle, work a pedometer. People are pretty good at direct suggestion. They're not so good at indirect suggestion. I am not a master storyteller. I'm not the wizard of stories. I have a hard time remembering joke punchlines and things like that. The only joke I can remember from this entire week, I've heard a lot of jokes. The only one I can remember actually came from late night TV, and it was Southwest complaint line. Basically says, I'm not even good at remembering the jokes. It's called an airplane, not an airtight plane. It's the only joke I can remember. See, I can't even remember it. Called the airplane, not an airtight plane, get it? So I'm not really good at these things. And so what I do is I have books and resources, stories, parables. I have Corey Hammond's Big Red book in my office, highlighted and marked up. There's a couple of gems in there. Carol's book is on my desk. Sometimes I'll Google the internet, a story about personal responsibility, etc. So here's what I found last night. Okay? I figured I'd just read you a couple of these because they're short. I don't do 10-minute stories. Remember that ADD kicks in? People are like, how long are your sessions? 30 minutes. I mean, if you can develop a phobia in 1 second, why can't you end a phobia in 30 minutes? So that's my theory. Of course, the psychologists are like, well, wait, it takes 16 weeks of behavioral desensitization. Come to my hypnosis class. So the stories I usually tell are pretty short. So last night I typed into Google because I wanted to do this. I have my stories and I use my books. But I thought, you guys, how can I direct you? Because I didn't write stories. I can't sell you stories. They're not my stories. So I typed into Google, stories with a moral. Here was one of them. This is actually kind of interesting. And as you relax, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, let me share with you an interesting story. I was just in Seattle just a couple weeks ago, and I learned about this event that happened at the Seattle Special Olympics. 9 contestants, all physically and mentally disabled, assembled at the starting line for the 100-yard dash. At the gun, they all started out, not exactly in a dash, but with a relish to run the race to the finish and win. That is all except one boy who stumbled on the asphalt, tumbled over a couple of times and began to cry. The other 8 heard the boy. They slowed down, they looked back. They all turned around and went back, every one of them. One girl with Down syndrome bent down and kissed him and said, "This will make it better." All 9 linked arms and walked across the finish line together. Everyone in the stadium stood, and the cheering went on for several minutes. And as you continue to relax, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm going to continue to share with you both some stories and some experiences and some direct suggestions that can benefit you. How I use stories in therapy. There's another great story. Actually, this one's kind of long. I'll tell it to you anyway, it's pretty good. It's a moral story, it teaches a lesson. And so as you relax, before we go any further, you come here today to address some issues. And our subconscious mind intuitively knows what it needs to hear in order to make change. And let me share with you a story that's been helpful to many others. It's about a mouse that looked through the crack on the wall to see the farmer and his wife open a package. What food might this contain? The mouse wondered. He was devastated to discover it was a mousetrap. Retreating to the farmyard, the mouse proclaimed a warning. There's a mousetrap in the house. There's a mousetrap in the house. The chicken clucked and scratched, raised her hand and said, "Mr. Mouse, I can tell you this is a grave concern for you, but it is no consequence to me. I cannot be bothered by it." The mouse turned to the pig and said to him, "There's a mousetrap in the house. There's a mousetrap in the house." The pig sympathized, but said, "I'm very sorry, Mr. Mouse, but there's nothing I can do about it but pray. But be assured you are in my prayers." The mouse turned to the cow and said, "There's a mousetrap in the house. There's a mousetrap in the house." The cow said, "Wow, Mr. Mouse, I'm sorry for you, but it's no skin off my nose, for I am a cow. So the mouse returned to the house, head down and dejected, to face the farmer's mousetrap alone. That night, a sound was heard throughout the house, the sound of a mousetrap catching its prey. The farmer's wife rushed to see what was caught. In the darkness, she did not see it was a venomous snake whose tail the trap had caught. The snake bit the farmer's wife. The farmer rushed her to the hospital, and she returned home with a fever. Everyone knows you treat a fever with fresh chicken soup. So the farmer took his hatchet to the farmer for the soup's main ingredient, but his wife's sickness continued. So friends and neighbors came to visit around the clock. To feed them, the farmer butchered the pig. The farmer's wife did not get well, she died. So many people came to her funeral, the farmer had the cow slaughtered to provide enough meat for them all. The mouse looked upon it from its crack in the wall with great sadness. So the next time you hear someone is facing a problem and doesn't think it concerns you, remember, when one of us is threatened, we are all at risk. We are all involved in this journey called life. We must keep an eye out for another person. Make an extra effort to encourage one another. Each one of us is a vital thread in another person's tapestry. These are the kind of stories that I like to introduce into my hypnotherapy session. Now, I'm not going to use this one with a lot of people. I guarantee you I'm going to find someone that's appropriate for. I said, Carol's book is on my desk. She invited me it was great, to a beatnik e-bark to come hear her do poetry reading. It was awesome. The book's been on my desk ever since. Here's one of my favorite poems from it. And I've said to clients, and Milton Erickson's theory was that the subconscious mind will intuitively know what it needs to know. This is why I love poetry. I'm going to read one of Carol's poems. As a writer, it meant one thing to her, and to each hearer, it will mean exactly what it needs to mean to you. And the beauty of hypnotherapy is I don't need to inject my opinions into the matter. I can simply let the client have a couple of moments to continue to process what's most important to them while I step out and use the restroom. And so as you relax, I'm going to share with you a poem from one of my mentors. It's called The Singer. I'm not a singer, but I knew one once. She was but a child, a slip of a thing. Her voice was high and clear, with power enough to sail right through the morning mist. She was a vocal athlete. She managed her voice so without effort. One could hear her voice from one mountaintop to another with no strain at all. Though very young, she was an artist, shaping, coloring, and sculpting. The notes and phrases as she sang, how musically she sang, with a sweetness I had never heard before. She grew up and her voice matured, but I still carried the sweet flute-like tones within my mind. Milton Erickson said the same thing in the book he titled, My Voice Will Go With You Always. I hope this has been helpful. It's lunchtime. Be back at 1